consultants in our work.
Absolutely. I think the effort is really, each of the supercomputer centers that I'm familiar with have taken quite different paths. And I have to say that Fran gave an excellent presentation on the choices that one makes with respect to this. Whether you go after some big Department of Energy or NSF supercomputer center grant, and you get one of these big number crunchers, and in order to finance it, you sell off part of it to industry. And so that's what the NCSA model was. And in a sense that the NSF funded half that center, and the other half of the center, they had to rely on selling cycles to local businesses to get the revenue to keep it going. She talked about the San Diego model, which started out like that, but then had a hard time sort of getting another big chunk of money from NSF to upgrade. So they began to see themselves moving down, as she said, the Branscombe pyramid, which is, from the very fastest machine down to desktop computers. They sort of started sliding down that, and they had to sort of rethink how they did, and they moved to a model that's more like what I think this center is going to be, in which you start out by looking at what the researchers want, and you build the center around that, rather than getting a big chunk of money and having a resource and trying to sell it to people all around the country. So, Chris is right. You really need to look at the opportunities.
Are there any locations that have two computer centers? Do you know, two in one area?
I'm not sure what you mean by two. I mean, there are certainly...
Like we're talking about, just we have one, but could you have another one here? Or not here necessarily, but is there any place in the country where there are two?
There are in North Carolina. There's the Research Triangle Park. I think that's where Rincy is.
Yeah.
And the Research Triangle Park has its own computing center. And then I think there is I can't remember what it was called. There's a North Carolina Computing Center, which was for those three universities before they built Rincy. So, and in San Diego, there's certainly more than the SDSC. And in Pittsburgh, there's more than that. I mean, CMU and Pittsburgh themselves have a lot of clusters that are apart from the Pittsburgh high-performance computing center.
Rick, I think to Tim's question, I think the model that Fran presented and also some of the pointers that Ann gave at that workshop would be very instructive for the task force as well as potentially for the consultant. And so a way to get that information but to continue that connection I think would be useful.
Again, just thinking about this whole project and picking up where Tim was talking about and what I mentioned earlier about just leveraging it for business. One of my favorite movies is Field of Dreams, so build it and they will come. And that's kind of what we're doing. But in a private audience with Dr. Berman, I asked her about the connectivity to an innovation district. That was my term. And she said the biggest thing you have to be careful of is pushing the bandwidth, because the problems they encountered in San Diego is having enough capacity, not in the house, but outside the house. So as we, again, maybe away from what you're explaining, one of the things I think the committee has to come to grips with, maybe with the help of the Gas and Electric and hopefully Comcast and Verizon, is if you're going to have 1,000 netbooks out there all trying to access data, is that going to be possible? So are we going to build it and then they'll come, or are we going to wait for things to happen and solve the connectivity problem? In other words, trying to digest this down to some action plans and recognizing some of the issues. It goes beyond your presentation. I'm just making an observation.
There are a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges. I think, one thing that, interested me, because in my past, I worked at NSF on and off, and one thing I did was I was in the original supercomputer center office that formed those centers. I was in charge of forming the network that would interconnect those centers. This isn't that kind of center. It isn't going to be, it isn't designed as a single agency funded big national resource. This is going to be a multi-institutional, multi-PI, multi-federal funding agency effort to put the machines in there. And that raises a lot of issues about how the center is going to be managed, and that's what I think Fran was really trying to get at. And there are a lot of challenges, and I think that the organizing, these guys know more than I, and Joe. There's a lot of challenges to try to put the organization together to make this really work for the academic institute. But it's got to happen.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Could you tell us what the next steps are? Are you having a follow-up workshop?
Well, there is another workshop. I still have a little city money left. Thank you to the state of Massachusetts, which funds it. It's May 25th. It will also be at Holyoke Community College. It's from 8:30 to 3:30, I believe. There's an Eventbrite registration site down the bottom. It's really focused on trying to introduce high school and community college and other college faculty to all these new technologies like cloud computing and virtualization. So Jim Perez is the keynote speaker at that meeting. You remember that?
Should be great.
I think it'll be another step towards trying to leverage what's happening in the center for this area.
Maybe you could add one more thing in terms of next steps. Jeff, are you going to give an update on the GHBCC consortium, what's happening there? I guess what I wanted to add is that Chris Hill and I are the leaders of the research, education, and outreach trust among the GHBCC consortium. We did a lot of work back last summer and the beginning of the fall talking about the kinds of possibilities here. And that was sort of put on hold because a lot of the business aspects of the center had to be put on track. And finally, that process is sort of coming to an end at this point. So we're starting up again with research, education, and outreach. And so I think all of the four partner universities will be getting back together again. I think our first meeting is on the 20th, our next meeting is on the 21st, to again cycle back and start addressing as a consortium what the outreach activities and education and
The GHBCC team is largely people from that research, education, and outreach committee.
Thank you. Step in front.
Okay, come back.
So I think the next item on the agenda is, follow right after Rick, is Jeff Roncato, who's here from UMass. Jeff gave a report at the last meeting on the consortium where we were at, and he has some updates that he'd like to tell people about.
So to follow up on Jim's comments, we've been working hard at all the nuts and bolts and trying to put all the pieces in place to put the project on a smooth pathway toward some kind of event in the fall with the governor.